Hey guys, it's Matt. Since the video yesterday, I've been writing up another version of how I believe this reality works. It does need to be done monthly. We're learning so much from what they're doing. They have to give themselves away in what they're trying to execute, the massive steps that they're taking. And then every time I write this from scratch, different things come out in a little bit different way. So, hey, you can do what you want with the comments, but it probably would be best to sit back and listen, and just, if you don't agree with my take on something, then make a counter argument on something that you don't agree with. That might be the best way to do the comment section. There's certain things that just don't sit right with you, or I'm missing something. I think that would be the best way to move us forward, but you can do what you want with the comment section. Last note about the comment section, people just leave a link. That's going to be removed. I mean, how is that moving us forward? If you're going to leave a link, write up 2 sentences as to what it is. Why should anybody go over? People just leave links. I just don't understand that. Occam's razor is a lie and a system tool to support its official stories, its official fairy tales. And why not just jump right in? The textbook reasons for the Civil War, the reasons it was fought, is a system production and a lie. Most things in history are. Most things in science are. That doesn't mean everything on society's movie screen is out to manipulate us or cause us harm. As we've talked about, the reality itself must reveal all levels of truth to those who care to pay attention. Nursery rhymes like Humpty Dumpty are carried through time because of the embedded truth that lies beneath the surface level of what seems like a child's story. Let's do Humpty Dumpty now. The story, as usual, isn't good enough to survive 200 minutes, let alone 200 years. The Humpty Dance is Shakespeare in comparison to it. You know, the Humpty Dance once got busy in a Burger King bathroom. It's Shakespeare compared to Humpty Dumpty and most nursery rhymes. Yet decade after decade, these nursery rhymes never go away. They leap through time like Victor and Marcus in Selena's Coven as shitty stories that somehow remain immortal. In this particular dumbass rhyme, you are Humpty Dumpty. And if you grew up in the West, at least, you are in pieces. At least your spiritual self are in pieces. You see, the masses will look to assholes like all the king's horses and all the king's men to put them back together again when they should be doing it themselves. We realize, a small subset of humanity, people listening to this, realize we don't need all the king's men, or the Kingsmen, that movie, that horrible movie with that really violent scene, and Samuel L. playing his worst role ever. That slob, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's one of those king's men. You know, people looking to those frauds, people looking to all the king's horses and all the king's men to help them out. No, we can use our own life and our own actions and the tools this reality affords to put ourselves back together, to remember Humpty. Humpty, you. This place, this reality, wants to Horcrux. It wants to Harry Potter Horcrux aspects of you so you can't find pieces of Humpty's shell. And that assumes you're even looking. You may be, people listening to this may be looking, but most people aren't. The phrase, quote, putting yourself back together, using life to putting yourself back together, it's used so much in our truth circles, it's become a cliche. So it should be explained, at least the way I see it. There are very few who, at one point in their lives, have not embraced this matrix reality fully. You embraced it at one point fully. I did. There are few in society who, at least at one point in their lives, did not envy the woman on the game show who was chosen to come on down, you're the next contestant, and who did not overbid on the second showcase showdown. We've been taught to love this place. It's almost impossible not to love this Agent Smith place at first, because the love of it is taught from birth, and your rewards are associated with one's success and success in navigating around inside of this reality. You've heard me talk about my San Francisco insurance company job in the 90s many times, and how I was once an Agent Smith wannabe too. I even replicated a gay version of myself that lived in the Castro district while I lived on Harrison Street south of Market. But when you're McDonald's loving the reality and seeking its rewards, You don't realize you're Humpty Dumpty. You're the broken egg. You don't realize any of that. You don't realize what you're supposed to do here. You may have been broken before you came into this reality. So potentially this experience is necessary. Or maybe something completely different. Maybe it's just part of this game or part of this test is to break you apart and see if the pieces can be put back together again through very difficult odds. This place ain't easy. Was Ivan Drago a truth drop? I must break you, Rocky. A truth drop? Probably not, but that's generally how the reality does business, so maybe. In general, putting Humpty's egg back together is the same as remembering, or putting pieces of yourself back together, finding yourself, or just like what happened to John Dunbar in Dances with Wolves. Kevin Costner, John Dunbar. What John Dunbar did, not Dunbar, John Dunbar, what he did was put himself back together with the help of the Sioux Indians and an abandoned white woman. Kicking Bird only helped Dunbar adjust his inner tuning fork or adjust his inner compass so he could, for the very first time in his life, find his own path, the path of a real human being, the path that this entire reality wants to take us off of. The Humpty Dumpty Nursty rhyme tells you that anyone or anything associated with the king, all the king's horses, all the king's men, anything associated with the king that represents reality or society itself, can't put your broke ass back together. You must do it for yourself. But guess what the good news is? The tools are all around you on which to do it. But most people are just chasing the red carpet ceremony with Ryan Seacrest before the Oscars. That's important. In our Dances with Wolves movie example, instead of seeking his own counsel and doing the work himself, what if, he did do that, which was good, but what if John Dunbar returned back to the soldiers' fort, What if he returned back and he asked those authority figures what he should do for spiritual fulfillment to get to the next level? He returned back into the heart of the beast system and he asked. What if he looked for the answer, not inside himself, but from a minion of the screen working inside the soldier's fort? What would he find if he did that? He'd find a colonel pissing himself and trying to shoot himself in the head. Now, this is indicative of the type of, quote, help all the king's horses and all the king's men can assist real Humpties with. They ain't very good at helping us on the spiritual path. You got to do it for yourself. There ain't no authority figure at any Cambridge or Oxford that's going to be able to help you out here. It's just the opposite. Those sons of bitches will suck you down to the abyss. In this world, it's no longer, quote, the king's horses. At least in the modern society, it ain't the king's horses, but instead the king's whores. Dick Cheney and Jimmy Fallon are one of those. Every one of the system minions are of little use to anything more in terms of your spiritual fulfillment. They're of no use whatsoever, except if you have very basic things to ask of them. For example, the proper technique on how to shove a cinder block up your ass. The minions and the king's horses and men are going to be very good at things like that, but never look to the screen for an important spiritual answer. Always inside yourself. Yes, Occam's razor, back to that topic, is another deception and misdirection. Is anybody surprised? I'm not. Occam's razor is another grassy knoll. It's another ground zero. It's put there by the system on purpose to deceive. But this one need not be delivered by a retarded Harley guy. Now, who the F is Occam anyway? And what the hell does his razor have to do with truth obtained through simple means? What's his question? To shave or not to shave? You don't need no clown and his Gillette to find the truth. There's a simpler way. It's called your inner knowing, or your frequency tuning fork inside you. Look deep within inside yourself, Clarice. What Miggs just did was reprehensible. A connection to a certain place, the inner tuning fork, will always connect you to the truth. Soon, when you turn on the evening news, if you have this connection to the truth, you flip on the evening news, you won't see Nora O'Donnell any longer. Instead of a pretty woman, you'll see a succubus who starred in They Live. Do you know how many times some asshole has tried to use Occam's razor against me to protect their worldview from what they consider to be Matt's crazy shit? These people will come up to me and say, Matt, regarding that event that you spout off about all the time, Matt. We're sick of hearing your crazy shit about it. You know, the one you now call 7-Eleven was a part-time job. Well, Matt, I invoke Occam's razor on your conspiracy ass. May you cast yourself into Mount Doom for indicting the neocon Republicans again when they are the people looking out for us against those horrible Democrats. You conspiracy theory son of a bitch. Come on, Matt. What scenario is more likely? The one on CNN or your way out horse shit? We know that Brzezinski, Mika's dad, husband to Stifler's mom, pulled the U.S. out of Afghanistan, screwing over all the Mujahideen who did the fighting for him. They screwed those Mujahideen. So you see, Matt, Occam's razor's always right, the simplest. They were simply pissed off. They were a pissed off Brady Bunch, the Mujahideen. They never get the McDonald's on every corner that they were promised by Zygmunt. Instead, what showed up to bin Laden's compound, sent by Zygmunt, was 100 boxes of those evergreen air fresheners that are hung or were hung on rearview mirrors in the 70s. That's all that was in there, and a roll of toilet paper. And bin Laden said, I can't stand for this, and he sought revenge. So it's just Occam's razor. So, Matt, I mean, you can't, these people are starving over there. Of course, I know bin Laden's family are multi-billionaires in the construction industry in Riyadh and Jeddah, but you can't eat air fresheners, just as you really shouldn't eat a McNugget. So a terrorist mastermind, per Occam's razor, Matt, hijacked 4 planes to quite simply enact revenge on the West. Voila! Occam's razor, jerk. So, Matt, is that more likely, or is your ridiculous conspiracy more likely? That on that Tuesday, the leaders of the United States did all of that to themselves in a massive conspiracy, which had to have had involved thousands of government employees, military, civilian contractors, all working at companies all over the world, from SAIC to Lockheed Martin. They all had to be in on it. Then after pulling all of that off, perfectly pulling it off, they incredibly covered it up for 20 years with complete control of the news. You conspiracy jerk. Occam's razor. Matt, you're a loon. The Occam's razor side is a strong argument. When I put it like that, I'm sure many of you are actually thinking about pulling a Mr. Orange and saying, he's convinced me. I want my dollar back. Okay, I'll throw in, but I would normally never do this. You paid for the breakfast, so I'll throw in. Occam's razor pitch regarding 9/11 is so strong, it's very effective. Only those who have dropped veils, and pretty much all their veils, don't succumb to it. But this is the way the reality does business. Small lies and tiny little capers are easily found out and easily pointed at. So if you do things, you do them massive, so they lie outside the range of what the man on the street can perceive. Then it can't be seen. 6 billion people are sleeping on the back of King Kong, and they think it's a throw rug, a bearskin rug. Of course, the Occam's razor story on CNN is a million times simpler, and that is why the masses believe in it and go along with it. After seeing, though, that this Lochnar is here and kind of getting a sense, as we do, of what it is up to and what it is capable of, this Lochnar reality, we are not put off by the complexity of the capers anymore in sticking with our convictions as to what happened or what did not happen. I don't care if it becomes more complex. I'm not going to move off what happened on that day or what didn't happen. In summary, though, to wrap up the Occam's razor section, you can see how the Occam's razor serves the system and serves the protection of the worldview of those in love with the system. Point is, after 10 years of research, we've seen too much to fall back to the simple. We didn't do 10 years of work for nothing. So let's finally apply some of the stuff we've learned and move forward. Let's do an account, once again, of where we are so we can move forward without spinning our wheels any longer. The Truth Wing of YouTube is set up so us poor bastards hunt rabbits and spin wheels our entire lives. The reality itself actually generates conspiracy. Let me repeat that. I believe the reality itself generates new conspiracy when it needs to support certain distractions and to keep people on certain farms. No matter how much you agree with that statement or take it literal the way I'm presenting it. We generally get a sense, or at least we agree, that in terms of all we've seen it do over the last 10 years, we would agree no real world can do all of this and pull it off perfectly all the time. If something actually generates conspiracy, I would point to it and say no real world can do that. Only a reality generation machine can do that. 7-Eleven is a part-time job by itself. Has so many impossibilities, so many impossible coincidences, reality breakdowns, thousands of people that are impossibly in on it. There's too many in that event by itself. You can do this with anything. Right? We'll talk in a second about mud flood, Tartaria, all the new conspiracies that just come up out of the blue like a rabbit giving birth. You can go back to JFK. Sorry. Let's go back to Debbie Does Dallas. What a coincidence that the main conspiracies still stand today and nobody's any closer. I'm not talking about the little old man with his rifle posing on the cover of Life magazine. I'm talking about, oh, Matt, he was going to end the Fed. Yeah, he was going to end the Fed, so it was them. Oh, he was going against the mob, so it was them. No, Matt, it was Fidel in Cuba because of what happened with Bay of Pigs, and they wanted Kennedy dead, and it was Cuba and Fidel and his brother and the beret-wearing Che Guevara. They did it, Matt. They set it up. No. See, he was going to get us out of Vietnam, so it was the military-industrial complex that killed him off. Oh, so what are we, like 50 years later, and we're not really any closer? See, if you wanted to pursue this Kennedy thing, the reality will give you mountains of things to research, mountains of books. People that looked into it found the evidence that they were looking for, basically. It gives all sides what it wants to find. This is not natural. This can't happen in a normal world. Mud flood just pops up 3 or 4 years ago. All this visual evidence, buildings covered in. If it's some sort of a matrix or fluid reality, it can accomplish these things, is what I'm saying. I don't believe a rock is real anymore. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. But when you see it enough, you have to form other conclusions. A Tartaria, all of a sudden, 4 or 5 years ago, all these maps come out of nowhere. Look, this whole Tartarian empire, but where was this before? Where did it come from? What truth channel did the reality place the breadcrumb and said, here's one, it's yellow, but it'll taste good. You take it and you propagate it through all your people, and then we'll spread it around. And then not that the guy presenting this thing now is in on it. These people are not in on it. It's what the reality does. It's a Geico. It's what you do. If you're a reality generation machine out to fuck over people that are finding the truth for the first time and discovering their spiritual selves, it's what you do. Now we have Crater Earth. What a coincidence that just at around this time, another big conspiracy comes our way. It's at some point, is it ever time to step back and say, this is what the reality does? Okay, it's time to see that. So as usual, the truthers will research like bloodhounds. And when the truther bloodhounds are just a few blocks away from the scent, a few blocks away, those truther bloodhounds, from finding the discarded piece of clothing, the reality then allows the jacket or the tear off of the arm of the jacket to be found by the truthers. It allows it. Then it hijacks the quest for truth and pushes the movement too far. Along with the torn jacket that the truthers' bloodhounds have found through diligent research and using common sense and pursuing the motivations of real human beings in terms of wanting to find out what the nature of their predicament is, then the reality delivers not just a torn piece of clothing and a few drops of blood. The reality provides 10 truckloads of members-only jackets in a giant pile bigger than the rubble of the North Tower, which didn't exist. And then the truthers go, what are we to do with all this? And instead of pointing it and saying, no real world can do this, the truthers propagate it. Isn't that smart? The conspiracies we pursue are regularly pushed overboard into the lunatic zone. So convincing anyone that any of it could be true or is actually happening becomes impossible. No group in the history of truth has been more played, used, and abused than the flat earth community. Now, we all have been played. I've said this for years. No group has been played like the truth community, but within the truth community, no group's been played as much as the flat earth community. That takes the cake. That doesn't mean anybody getting triggered. Give me a second. That doesn't mean that your observations aren't correct, especially about all the fraud that comes from NASA and lone scum. Okay, that you're correct in that. But it's just that the presentation of truth But the way you pursued it was molded by the system itself to a level where your presentation will never be taken seriously or never be believed by anybody that this society considers, quote, normal. So relax, anybody getting triggered. We're all in the same foxhole here. We've all been victims. The entire reality is designed to play tricks on real souls. The truth is hidden behind mountains of lies. In what area, Matt, is the truth hidden behind mountains of lies? In what area? In every area. Once this is seen and understood by people like us, people like me, yeah, people like us, there's no point in examining the details on anything any longer. Matt, do you want to know what happened here or there, the details on this or that, or the who, what, when, where, why, and how? No, I don't. I don't know how the reality works. I don't need to see those details any longer. So that means, for example, just take my last video I did on the Statue of Freedom. It's worthless to most of us, yet still worthwhile to a subset of us who still need convincing that everything presented by the screen or by the authorities of the screen is a fraud. It's still worthwhile to the subset within us that still need that convincing that one more thing is a fraud. Yes, that everything comes from authority is a fraud. It takes a long time to see that and to see that that possibly can be true. Then you finally realize that that's true. And then the final step is to realize that that cannot be possible in a real world. So the endless researching of certain topics by a large portion of the truth community is done mostly because the person doing the research can't possibly believe that one more thing is a fraud, or worse, I'm getting close to seeing that everything is a lie. Let me save you a great deal of time and years. It's all a fraud. Let me save you another 5 years. A real world can't do that. Oh, Matt, don't you want to know exactly what happened to the Pentagon? No. Those with the correct attitude would say, who the F cares what happened to the Pentagon? They could be converting it into the world's largest Taco Bell right now, for all I care. They lied. I see the lie. It was a trick. I see the trick. That's all we need to know. That's the only place we need to get, at least in this segment, in step 1. We don't need to know the details. The reality, though, the reality itself, the Lochnar, the not nilk, it don't like the who cares attitude. Oh, that rabbit will get up and bite you in the ass if you don't pay attention to it. It don't like the who cares attitude. Who cares what happened with the details? This is, by taking that attitude or taking that approach, this is turning free will into TJ's theory of free won't. Well, aren't you going to take the choices it gives you? No, I'm going to withdraw from it. But Matt, you have the free will to choose its duality. I'm going to free won't and withdraw myself from it. Not free will, free won't. Not done but bear, done bar. Like Jack Nicholson in a movie that should be called A Few Good Men and a Bitchy Demi Moore. The reality wants you on that hill hunting rabbits. The reality needs you on that hill hunting rabbits. And I mean literally needs your energy doing that to exist, to survive. Who's going to defend our freedom? You, Captain Weinberg? The reality can't trick like us. It distracts to a similar result. Now, we all need to give the reality a allegorical or metaphorical code red. We need to give the reality a code red or a soap and a sock beating. And that's not done by fighting it the way that analogy implies. No, you can't fight it directly. It's done by the reality code red or soap beating is done by walking away from it. Free, not free will, free won't. Walking away from its trail of pissed on breadcrumbs. The humongous speech, I'm not going to do it. It was a truth drop. Just walk away and I'll spare your lives. Interesting. Just walk away from this reality shenanigans, and maybe he meant the humongous meant I'll spare your souls or your connection to spirit. In one degree, the humongous delivered truth. Did the big brute understand what he was delivering? I doubt it. Just walk away and I'll spare your souls. Maybe he meant to say that. Free won't. There appears to be 4 general categories of things or entities in this snow globe environment, or wherever we are. 4 general categories of things or entities. Who knows what to call some of them? We're in group 1. Group 1, very simple. Real souls with a connection to spirit. And that's the bridge to somewhere not here, somewhere else. It's you, me, people in the search for truth, people finding themselves, putting Humpty back together. Group 1. Things like Ellen are not Group 1. Who knows what that thing is? We'll ponder it. Group 2 are the people around us, for the most part. Various degraded subsets of Group 1 that used to be real Pinocchio boys, but are kind of devolving back into wood, things like that. Now, some people in this group, too, people around us, they're now completely cut off spiritually. Some still has a light, but the light is dimming. A tie's being cut. They're making more ties to this place. Some in Group 2 never were. These are the people around us that we can't get through to, potentially, and never have a chance to get through to. Now, the NPCs are here in Group 2, but there's no point to endlessly debate the NPC concept anymore, in my opinion. Whatever that group is, whatever that thing is, it ain't you, and it ain't me. The Declaration of Independence lies. All, quote, men are not created equal. Who or what around us that's an NPC, it's not really our business. We just simply need to be aware that people like this likely exist, and we need to know that in dealing with them, because they will serve the system first and foremost. They will serve this reality and this system, and not you. Now, this may be important in a variety of different situations, including, say, a business venture, for example. You need to know who you're dealing with, because when things get tough or hot, it will serve the system. All right, so you have to kind of identify. So this person's probably some sort of NPC or a degraded individual that now serves the system. Group 1, real people like us, cutting ties to this place, strengthening spiritual bridge. Group 2 is just the opposite. Just reverse it. Cut it, use it through their own actions and own behaviors, cutting all spiritual ties, if they even exist in subsets of Group 2, and strengthening ties to the reality itself, where you could call a willingness to take the download. So we're Group 1. Basically, the group people around us are Group 2. Group 3 and 4 gets very interesting. You've heard me talk about this before. We'll be rather brief, and we'll move on. 3 is the reality itself, or whatever here is powerful enough to manipulate the circumstances of our lives, including the twisting of metaphysical reality to serve its aim. Whatever stands behind all the reality breakdowns and 7-Eleven is a part-time job and everything else, we don't know what it is. We can't point at it. There's something that projects the false screen, and something who the minions are out to please or serve. It is nothing we in this avatar, in my opinion, will ever be able to understand fully or point to, just as we can't hear a dog whistle. It's just on a completely different frequency. Yet, by the way the society functions, we know it exists. For now, without a 5-page side discussion that'll take an extra hour, it's okay for our purposes here in what's being presented to simply call whatever this thing is evil. But it's a dumbed-down catch-all. That's not really an appropriate descriptor. The reality breakdowns that we've seen are too many to list at this point. It all adds up to a non-human element that's here and a reality that is very fluid and changeable. It's not very real. What is this thing exactly? Who cares? Just free won't it? Who cares? If I point at it, it probably takes some of my energy. My name's Johnny Utah. Who cares? Just do a Tyler. Do a Tyler to Johnny Utah. Who cares? Group 4, the minions that serve the thing I just described in number 3, or serves whatever projects the fraud onto the screen of society. At first, the screen is a blurry image. That's the way it comes. It comes from the depths of Mount Doom onto the screen. It's a blurry image. It needs to be solidified by real consciousness. It needs to be brought into reality and birthed into reality by people like you and me. People like me, yes. People like you and me. The minions, the Hollywood stars, the Henry Kissingers, the politicians, the Governor Wolfs at their podiums, all these minions, they run around and they get in our business. So we bring it to life. We bring life into it. That's what the minions' role is, to make it seem real to us. Because our consciousness focus on is all that matters. The minion level is basically everything you see on TV. It's a governor at a podium. It's Lady Gaga, it's the Queen, it's Henry Kissinger, Madonna, etc., times a million. It's actually quite simple. It's all simple. The upcoming presidential debate is a great example. Biden and Trump will put on their show, and hundreds of millions of people, different levels of realness, but hundreds of millions with their intention, will believe in the U.S. political system. They already believed in it by watching another debate. It will be reinforced. A fresh blow of wind will go over it to re-solidify the cement on the fake political system by the millions of people watching the show, which will be the debates. And government and all that, people watching and believing in it, will then re-harden the cement. Their lie is generally a chocolate bar. The lie of reality is a chocolate bar, or that maybe the bar that's thrown into the Caddyshack pool. Real people believing in it is like a refrigerator. It keeps it solidified. It keeps it hard and together. What was that, a Baby Ruth? I guess that pool was cold. If you remove the real consciousness, it becomes a chocolate bar tossed in the sun. It just melts, dissolves to nothing. Very few of these minions that run around and serve it are in on it. I'm convinced of that. Okay, very few have a full understanding of their role in servicing the underlying reality itself. Now, whenever these minions have an understanding, it's very limited, in my opinion, and very compartmentalized, like the agents presenting themselves in the Adjustment Bureau. Keep going back to that movie. It's fun. It's not that great. It's Matt Damon again playing Matt Damon. That's all he knows how to do. These guys are running around going through doors that are like portals. They have a magical quality about them. But when truly pressed on the underlying nature of reality, they don't know the answer. This is exactly how the minions work here. For example, Anderson Cooper Pooper, he knows that Robert South Park, the cartoon, Robbie Park, South Park, the cartoon, he knows that's not a real mourner. It's a real moron, but it ain't a real mourner. I doubt if Anderson knows any more than that it didn't happen and these events don't happen. How the underlying reality works, he probably isn't privy. Jared will walk right by him with his tray, doesn't get into that back room. The evil genius that is here is that good, in my opinion, where even top-level minions and handlers don't truly know what's going on. I really believe that. So George Clooney is a minion, of course, but he doesn't even know how to cut a watermelon so it can be eaten. He doesn't know anything about anything. Where in Ellen, a creepy little poltergeist like that probably has a sense of how the dark side works through Hollywood. But in terms of how the political system works, the underlying fabric of reality, a little poltergeist like that wouldn't have a clue, in my opinion. In fact, it could be said that some in Group 2, remember Group 1 is us, Group 2, people around us, devolving. Some in Group 2 potentially devolve from an aspect of real spirit with ties, or originally had ties to something out of here, devolve into minions, into Group 4. This would be the case, for example, in my opinion, for most local news anchors, for example. Group 2 devolving into Group 4. It probably happens more often than we think. A hobbit devolves into Gollum or Schmeagol, if you will. Think about it. Who are most of your friends, family, and neighbors right now serving regarding the thing out your window, the C thing out your window? Who are they serving? The people around us are absolutely serving the master agenda when it comes to this thing. They may be a large group of people you would consider to be in Group 2, the people around us. They were once real boy Pinocchios. Some of them they're starting to devolve back into wood. They may be devolving into a minion role and serving the evening news agenda, which is the opposite of what a human being is supposed to be doing. For example, my father, he'll make a comment with pride in his voice, with pride on how good and great his new N95 mask is. He's actually proud of the one he purchased, if you can believe that. Also, he has recently commented to me how great Amazon is. And they order all the time, and it comes in like 2 days. It's incredible. And he glows with satisfaction about how he works through the system and how the system serves him, and he serves it to a degree. You know, he just glows like, I have a date with Lisa tonight. Isn't that wonderful? It's like that. But he doesn't sing in the middle of the night in the alleyway, to be loved. He doesn't do that. People like my father praise Amazon. They praise the outward manifestations of the heart of this beast system, where we're repulsed by it. It's just the opposite for most of the people around us. Now, what he and billions are serving is obvious. Now, he has no idea he's serving this master system and has no idea he's really supposed to be here on earth to serve aspects of himself. He has no idea. If asked, he would have no clue that he's even on this earth to do that or what that even means. Once we arrive at this point and have a meeting of the minds, and generally we agree, you can sum up the reality in literally a few sentences. Those true channels that want to make it seem complicated, that's a deception. It's because it presents itself as massively complicated, that means the truth of it is very, very simple. What animates the reality or what stands behind the screen, whatever it is, we're not going to point it out in the police lineup. Whatever it is, it's out to do a simple thing. It's out to devolve a real soul and turn it into a minion, or at least turn it into something that serves its own aims and goals. And at the minimum, that turn it into something that just goes along to get along, that no longer cares on fulfilling the life mission or winning the life test or using the tools of the reality to better ourselves. Just goes along to get along. Basically, to turn Eustace, it's the opposite. Pinocchio, another one of these nursery rhymes or stories, they all have truth. But this time, in this reality, most of us start as a real boy and devolve into a piece of wood. And then that wood rots. And then Geppetto probably does sick things to it. You know, who's Geppetto in that example, right? Is that what's animating the screen? You know, it does this in general. The reality does this by cutting spiritual, or devolves people by cutting spiritual ties or blowing up the bridge in the River Kwai. That is our link out of the snow globe. We have to blow it up ourselves. It can't just blow it up on us. We have to do it to ourselves. Now, this topic is not reserved for the moment of death, the spiritual tie out of here. It doesn't just pop up in front of you at the moment of your death. In my opinion, of course, and from a lot of smart people, the spiritual bridge to higher self, or the spiritual bridge that's out of here, or to something like higher self, or whatever you want to call God, is there with you now. It's with real people now. You have to determine, are you strengthening it, or are you cutting it, doing the bidding of the reality? Are you cutting it and doing what the reality wants you to do? Cut it off. Blow it up. The force is strong with this one. These aren't the Roger Goodells you're looking for. You know, that force is strong in somebody that has that spiritual connection. Okay? They're not being devolved down towards the abyss, down to the NPC level, down towards the dimming light. The reality itself primarily creates minions and helpers. Like Sauron created orcs, Saruman created orcs in the second one. The reality creates minions and helpers to its goals and aims. It does this primarily by changing one's sense of self, one's knowing of oneself, or how one relates to oneself. It will really fuck that perception up in most people. Now, that is primarily done by having one identify with the honors, awards, and metrics of standing associated with this place. That's ultimately how it's done on the ground level in the perverted strategy. I'm a Nobel Prize winner. I'm a Cecil Rhodes Scholar. Yeah, if you do a good job in school and you're a Cecil Rhodes Scholar, you get a 5 Diamond Award that Al Pacino coveted in Ocean's 13. If you live your life and you look down at all the awards and trophies and accolades and Person of the Year and in certain Caitlin Case, Man, Woman of the Year or Thing of the Year, whatever, you have all these awards and magazine covers and trophies and medals, and ooh, you really, really strengthen ties to this place. Real people, people like me, people like you, they know that these system things and awards is not what they want bestowed on them. Real people run from this sort of recognition. A love or covet of celebrity is the most pathetic and obvious symptom of somebody who has lost all sense of self or true self and who's being devolved into something. Love of celebrity, a giveaway every time. Now, there are other symptoms and other manifestations, but this one is just obvious. Someone who would, for example, follow Brad Pitt through the airport to get a glimpse of him, that's a sure sign of someone who has lost the life test or is losing big time to the general system and becoming a degraded or has become a degraded individual. The love of celebrity, the love of the red carpet, the love of that little twerp Ryan Seacrest running around trying to get interviews. A real person, if informed that Brad Pitt is in the airport, couldn't give a shit about seeing his old ass. You're not going to go look for him. The reality, which acts like it's alive most of the time, is masterful at getting people to believe they are something that they're not, or at least not supposed to be. This is the main reason billions will answer, what do you do, with their occupation, and also why this is the first question posed when people meet each other, say at a party. In 2018, when these sorts of events were actually legal, the reality itself looked in on a cocktail party that was going on in the Hollywood Hills, and the reality itself peeped into the window like a little pervert, and it found that 45 conversations out of 50, when two people met each other for the first time, the first question was, what do you do? Came up 45 out of 50 times. And then the other conversations was about basketball. Upon witnessing this from the window, the reality was quite pleased with itself and went away quietly to look in on Madonna. How many people at any party, anywhere, when asked after they've met somebody for the first time, they just reach for another pig in a blanket, they said, what do I do? You just asked me, what do I do? Well, I study reality to understand what tools this construct affords me to better my spiritual self. The woman that guy's talking to looks over at him with a funny look on her face and says uncomfortably, I meant, what's your job? What's your occupation? Oh, I see. You want to know what I do during the day to collect more of these green little energy units with the creepy runes and symbols on the back. The woman then turns and walks away, faking a bathroom emergency. No doubt what we are trying to become and do for ourselves is not going to go over very well, whether we admit it or not, with the people in Group 2, people being devolved down into wood, people serving the system. They're not going to like our answers in this regard. And it's not whether we say it publicly or not, it's almost like they almost get a sense of who we are. And they don't like it at all. They basically become a combination of Donald Sutherland at the end of The Body Snatchers pointing and screaming, Agent Smith, and that scene from They Live. It's not fun, but this is the situation we find ourselves in. Nevertheless, I'm not going to go along to get along. I don't give a shit if the Donald Sutherlands point at me and scream. What is happening now out our window is just a continuation of a long, ongoing process coordinated by a reality through its minion assholes. It has roots back to the pyramids, most likely. This is not a 9-inning baseball game for them. This is a 9,111-inning baseball game for them, without even a stretch inning. We don't know for sure if we, as souls, have done all this before. We don't know. Many of us get a sense that we have. Okay? It's possible, even likely. Now, this time, though, it feels a bit different, doesn't it? Well, how can you say that, Matt? You don't remember the last time. Okay, I'll give you that. But it feels a bit different, at least this moment in time. Not just in their desperate actions, but in, you could say, command of our own position in dealing with what is happening or what will happen. We feel powerless, yet more empowered at the same time. Okay? Overall, it's becoming very, very good news in the ways that are more important. In the ways of us fitting into society, of course, we're becoming outcasts and our life is getting very, very difficult. But that's not what's important. We now have the knowledge and a few techniques, and we're learning daily, seemingly to break this cycle of coming back if one had existed in the past. It's likely the minion assholes have been at whatever they're doing to human beings for a long, long time. It's likely, according to some smart people, that the minion level is a different type of incarnation that even remembers past lives. That's why ancient knowledge is brought forth. Technology comes out of the blue in less than 100 years that can't be explained. They, the Ellens, the minions, the George Bushes, whatever that minion class is, they are not the same as you and I. all men are not created equal in this regard. They seem to be upping the ante on real souls generation by generation over a long period of time. And right now, they have slammed the pedal to the metal, the likes of which we've never seen before and likely has never been. They are going all in and then some on steroids. Now, some king back in the day, hundreds of years ago, some king, fat-ass mother effer on a throne, getting drunk, he might have been a real asshole, probably was. Could you imagine one of those people actually caring about their subjects and the people outside the castle? Probably all real assholes. But, what are they going to do? Their sphere of direct influence on people, on real people, their direct influence to degrade spiritual self was minimal because they had no real technology. They had all the king's horses and all the king's men. What are they going to do? Maybe they had the sheriff of Nottingham's witch who threw her bones around from time to time and screamed. But the point is, these minions in the past seemed limited. For starters, the kings of this age have a mind control device that nobody leaves the house without. And that's one of 100 tools in the kings of this age's arsenal. Okay? It's scary what these modern assholes can accomplish. That's why everything's going on steroids. Maybe they're losing their magic. I hope they are. But the technological tools of this era are 1,000,000 times more than what those jerks in the past had. And look at the havoc even those jerks caused. Now, we can observe how the heat on the frogs has been slowly turned up over time, but now it's been cranked, it seems. Maybe it's the astrology of it, the coming conjunction. They have to get things done within the confines or bookends of their astrology. Maybe that explains it, but it doesn't matter. Noticing it is enough. So when I was a kid, though, talk about turning it up. When I was a kid, things were seemed normal. Of course, if you looked into things, the fraud was still there. It just was much more benign. Like, you turn on the TV, it's reruns of Gilligan's Island, reruns of I Dream of Jeannie. It's generally a simpler time. The main aspects of the fraud was still there, of course. Everything from politics to a buzzed cauldron. But it was more benign, less ability to directly get up in your face, in your business. All right? Now, in just one generation, we've gone from the concept of the book of 1984. This is exactly my generation, my era. I just turned 50. Okay, we heard about the book 1984 in high school. Oh, that's just some sci-fi that's never going to come true. Went from being this vague notion. Then we passed the date itself in 1984. Okay, I heard about it being some vague notion in junior high, whatever. Then we passed the date itself. Then we now are living in the exact reality that the book basically pointed out, with few differences, okay? It's not quite the boot to the neck yet, but in every way, 1984 is here. China is here, Mr. Burton. China is here. What the hell does that mean, Wang? China is here. What's that? That's the black blood of the earth. You mean oil? No, Mr. Burton, I mean the black blood of the earth. If we had any doubt about the inhuman element that people like me have assigned to reality itself, it basically all got cleared up this April with the CV thing. If we had any doubt. No, we don't have any doubt anymore. Well, what was your doubt? Oh, I had 1%. Now it's 100%. It's all gone away. We know very, very eerily and scarily, we kind of know exactly what we're dealing with now. A group of men and women, regular old men and women, drinking coffee in meeting rooms, can't put the entire world into a mask in 10 weeks with almost perfect compliance, no pushback, and no dissenting voices from any sort of authority, basically worldwide, anywhere. It's not possible for normal people to pull all of that off. Stop believing it is and open your mind. Open your mind, Quaid. Open your mind to new possibilities. Look around two corners. Take Quato's hand, man, and open your mind, Quaid. Start the reactor. Even in the 7-Eleven is a part-time job event. By itself, proved by itself the inhuman elements that this reality is capable of. And now this thing is 1,000 times larger than that, and we've been looking at it for 20 years. We don't need to see any more, people. We need to move on. Okay, in terms of what's happening now, truth community should move beyond the complete hoax thing. Okay, truthers dig in more than anybody into their established belief sets, and they harden like cement. Look, something is making certain groups or certain types of people sick. Something. But of course, it's not what they say it is. Of course, the news is all lies. Of course, it's all inflated. But there's something, okay? We all know somebody at this point, like my cousin. No, I don't think she's lying. I don't think she's in on it. I don't think she regularly goes to the Illuminati window. We all have these stories at this point. The severity is not what they say it is. It's being used to move mass consciousness into a lower, dark place. That's obvious. It's something. It's not a complete hoax, okay? As is though, the Goldilocks reality works the same way every time and presents itself like it works like an evil genius presenting itself right down the middle, as usual, giving both sides the evidence it needs and wants to firmly dig into their viewpoints. This is an aspect that can't be real, all right? Now, there's enough on the BS side, of course. There's endless conspiracy. There's things related back to the basketball event. There's a BS here and BS. There's enough on our side, of course. There's mountains and mountains on our side. So, as usual, the truth community can point at it and cry foul, and the news is lying. Of course, it's giving us everything that we expect to see, as usual. Anybody surprised? No, it's Geico. It's what it does. But the reality on the other side, your neighbors that believe in everything and will love to talk with you, but you'll sit outside 50 feet apart with a mask on, people that act like that, the reality delivers just enough meat and just enough real sickness and potentially just enough real death so the masses believe every aspect of the news is real. It's, once again, given both sides what it expects, and it's given both sides what it wants so they can stay cemented in their position. This is a non-human element. This is something regular people couldn't pull off. Just here's an example, one of thousands. In the same week, I'm told by our friend Ben about a doctor who's acting strange around him, and he's certainly trying to cover up what's happening in the New York area or New Jersey area, wherever he was, or he went to this wedding or whatever. He was uncomfortable, and he's going along to get it to protect his pension, his paycheck, and Ben could clearly see he's trying to cover things up. Do I believe Ben? Of course I do. Now, I'm also told, but my once best friend Tony, I'd love to be best friends again, but it's unlikely if we're in two completely different realities. He tells me about a doctor in New York that he met that tells him just how horrible it is with the death and the sickness. And so two conflicting reports to two different groups at the exact same time. Is anybody surprised? I'm not surprised any longer. It's Geico. It's what it does. It's time to see it. This is what a reality generation machine does. It's Geico. It's what you do. The fact that no side ever gets a win, and we sense no side's ever going to get a win, that's impossible in a real world. I mean, the flat earthers, for example. Oh, sure, they have a ton of evidence. NASA's lied about absolutely everything. They've shined lasers across lakes, and the laser's the exact same 5 inches off the water, a mile and a half away. There is no 8 inches per mile squared. But truthers, think about it. Think about it. We know deep down in any of these truther pursuits versus the mainstream narrative, nobody's ever going to get a win. Pick an event, throw a dart. Is anybody ever going to get a win? You think the flat earthers are going to get a win where all of authority, science, academia, they're just going to come around and say they've proven it? Or if you don't like that event, in anything that we look in where we have a viewpoint, a fake bang event. Didn't you know, Matt? At least most of the U.S. population believes these 5 events were fake. No, they don't. Nobody's ever going to get a win. They're not going to come around to our side. We can see right through it. We're never going to come around to their side, whether it be space, the buzzed cauldron missions, anything. That's not possible in a real world. It's time to take the next step. If you imagine going 50,000 miles back and looking down at what's happening in the snow globe, when you have now thousands of examples, you have to use the thousands of examples. The 1,000 times you've trekked through the mud and the muck, you have to use that to form a much more general, higher level conclusion. Again, in summary, with the CV thing, the masses get exactly what they want to see. The evil genius reality gives people just enough incidents in their lives, or somebody that knows somebody, so they believe the news is 100% real. Now, sure, the same people have they don't use common sense. They believe the news. It's given them just enough. Oh yeah, my aunt had it tested. She was sick, so this thing's real. But they go to the Wawa and they see the same guy there's checked him out for 6 months straight, and he's interacting with how many thousands of people? If it was so virulent and so spreading, the Wawas would be shutting up and down, constantly shut down. None of that stuff happens. They don't ever apply the common sense of their regular day-to-day life. The reality is given them. They don't know anybody that's just keeled over dead, but there's just enough given to them where they just know somebody or somebody down the block, and it gives them enough so they just bow down and believe everything on the news. All right? I didn't say their position and our position is equal. I'm just saying both sides are given enough so they never come off their positions. Okay? No real world can do that. Something is making people sick, right? That's all we need to know. 5G is a factor. The reset of reality could be a factor. The non-germ theory, of course, the body cleansing, all of these are factors. Okay, but it's still not this is in the weeds discussion. We still need to come back and look down on it from 50,000 feet. My theory a few videos back was forget the new radio frequencies like 5G and the body needs to cleanse to reset itself and put itself in alignment with the new frequencies going forward. The reality itself has moved to a lower level, a different frequency, a different resonance. A reality reset itself could be making people sick. Of course, that's not something you can catch or spread to the guy next to you. But all that's on the table. But for our purposes here, the exact tactics or strategies or exactly what's going on is irrelevant in seeing it, looking down on it from 50,000 feet. It's all that matters is this. So what exactly is going on? It's irrelevant compared to the general understanding and the basic reasons of why not just this is being done, but why everything we've ever looked at is being done. No, this is not a new theme for us. But is there anything more important? No. So let's do it again. Okay? Here's what's going on. It's not new. The reality itself, number one, is out to, as usual, degrade and dehumanize a human being, cutting off ties with spiritual self. Ever hear that one before? It's what it does over and over and over again. The new metaphor I like is the Pinocchio boy into the piece of wood. Number two, continuously the reality works to give themselves and their minions more power so they can set up new systems inside of an evolving or degrading society. And guess what the purpose of that does? To facilitate number one. Everything they do is to facilitate number one. So again, they're moving society, Big Brother rules, 1984 appearing outside, everything that's being put in, tracing and tracking and this and that and all the ground level stuff and all the tactics that the truthers analyze. Every bit of it at this level, 1,000 years of truth or bloodhound research, it all points back to number one. The ability to degrade or dehumanize a human being and to have that human being choose for itself to cut ties with spiritual self. That's it. So if anybody needs it, how is the current shenanigans happening out our window accomplishing the only thing the reality is ever out to do to a human being? One, well, a human being puts certain emotions out into the ether, and if the reality can make it so those emotions or what the real human is projecting out is along the lines or frequency spectrum or resonance of fear, stress, anxiety. One, they most likely feed on that, but that also moves a human being off a more natural frequency or a frequency that a human being needs to be in to better themselves. Nobody is going to better themselves or create spiritual ties if they're constantly putting out millions and millions of megawatts like a radio station tower of fear, stress, anger, and worry and everything else that the system breeds. All right? Takes you off your spiritual path. Number 2, a real human being thinks and acts on its own. A real one does, thinks and acts on its own. So if you mold a society to only be able to take its clues from a central authority, this is another dehumanizing tactic. People saying to somebody else, well, wait a second, did Governor Wolf give us permission to go outside today? People in Melbourne, Australia, all of that. Do you take your clues from your tuning fork within or from some perverted minion of society? If you're being trained to do the latter, you're cutting off spiritual ties. You're choosing to dehumanize yourself. 3, the 6 feet apart thing cuts off the natural energy fields that are shared or is shared amongst real human beings. Heart entrainment. 4, the mask hinders or acts as a governor in the natural process of real humans sharing emotion, facial emotions. This list could go on and on and on. I mean, but the point of this is every strategy or tactic all goes back to the prior number 1, the degrading of a human being. Now, why it would want to work on somebody an entire lifetime and to get them to cut spiritual ties, to me, it seems rather obvious at this point. Why would want to work them over for an entire lifetime? Because if real people choose this place, and in every behavior and every action, they're McDonald's loving it, then they may be coming back. Or if not recycled back here, and they've created their own Jacob Marley chains, perhaps they proceed to a lower frequency place. I guess a Christian would say hell, but I see it as either potentially coming back because they need a certain type of person to come back. They feed off that. They don't kill all your livestock. People are like, they're going to kill all of us. No, you don't. You don't just kill your livestock. Unfortunately, certain groups are livestock to the evil that's here. They feed off the frequencies and energies. You don't just kill your livestock, but potentially, if you make all the wrong decisions in your life, maybe upon your death, you proceed to a lower frequency plane or place. This place right now, our Earth is potentially a prep school from their perspective for the reality below it. Maybe. Just personally, my dreams kind of fit into this or support this theory. My dreams personally are pure chaos. Pure chaos. I've mentioned it before. I'll be driving a car, smash it through a window, jump out, a cat will jump on my head, scratch me. Just complete nonsense, pure chaos. There's the space shuttle. This happened to me. Go up in the space shuttle, fall out, slam down onto a parking lot, get up and walk right into a 7-Eleven and buy something after falling out of the space shuttle. It's just pure nonsense and chaos. And, that's what they said in Event Horizon. Matt, maybe you look too much for movies to deliver truth. Okay. Yeah, you can look too much. I agree. But just apt to this example, it said it's been through a realm of pure chaos. Each rung down is closer potentially to pure chaos. It's almost like they're trying to merge this plane of existence into the lower realm of pure chaos. If we train the way the system wants us to train by doing the things that the system dictates we should do, then we are absolutely, it's like a prep school then for the lower realms. There are some Buddhist philosophies that are similar to this. But the point is simple, guys. We're never going to know exactly. The point is you just observe the reality, and the minions of the reality, they spend their whole lives getting you to screw yourself over. And the point is, well, what's the reason for that? And really, we're never going to know exactly, but it ain't good, okay? That's all you need to see. It's not good. So you see the place that they're trying to put you into, and then you simply put yourself in the opposite place, right? The great news is, I know there's a way out for us. I know there's a way out, a way to win. Absolutely. It's the best news of all time. Forget the next 20, 30, 40 years of your life. How about the next 20, 30, 40 trillion years? That's a little bit more important. How I know? It's no great insight on my part. I'm no guru in this regard. I can't read auras. I've never been with no Jared Kushner in some back room where he passed out in an Eyes Wide Shut party and he slipped and said some things that he heard his masters talk about what happens to certain souls in the afterlife. I don't have any of that, but I know. Now, how do I know? Because there must be a reason. There's no other explanation. There must be a reason why they work so hard to get in our business. They work so hard day and night with the construction of society to get you to doom yourself, to put you in a certain place. Why would they work so hard if you're just what the atheist says you are? It gives itself away. It's so obvious. It's absurd. You don't need any insight to know that, you might not know if you chose to come here, but you're an aspect of something that was before this reality or this life and something that will exist after. It's obvious at this point. So once again, we come back to the 3 steps. It's the most important thing of all time and something almost no truth channels talk about. This is common sense. I have no great insight. If the truth channels aren't talking about something very similar to this, that proves they're just running with the bulls, running down the rabbit holes that the system wants them to run down to. Forget that bullshit. This 3 steps is all that's important and can be applied to everything we've ever analyzed and looked at throughout ever years you've been doing this. Step 1, take any conspiracy you want and plug it in here. Anyone. Matt, there were no planes? What? Take anything you want. It doesn't matter. Matt, how could there be no record of mud flood anywhere in anybody's family tree, in a napkin sketched on somewhere that somebody shoved behind a couch? There's no record anywhere. Just we have these pictures. We have Zabruta pictures of these buildings covered in mud, but nobody even wrote a sentence or when they put their palm in the cement, they wrote, there was a mud flood here my grandmother talked about. Nobody mentions it. How is that possible? Matt, how could every fake or wake, we say wake event, how could every wake event be littered with this gematria? Everything's coded in the 9/11 and the 33 and this and that and the 88 and the 666. How is that possible? It's coming out of license plates even. It's so pathetically obvious. How come there's so many words, Matt, in common words and languages that supposedly arose separately? Matt, how come people don't notice that the LEM, was involved in the buzzed cauldron event? How come the LEM, people don't notice that it can't support? It's got no 4,000-pound heating and air conditioning HVAC system that would need or be needed to combat plus minus 200 degrees in the sun and the shade. How come people don't talk about that? How does a Tom Hanks engine even light in a goddamn vacuum? Keep this going, or this train of thought going, for a million more examples. That's where we've been. Okay? Over 50,000 examples alone are provided by the buzzed cauldron schemes through Apollo, Gemini, and the other Greek gods. 50,000 by itself. And regarding the moon, it relates back to JFK. It is comical how still probably about 10% of people that would call themselves in the truth community still believe that President Kennedy was working for us. Yeah. Sure, he was working for us. It would matter. It was a coup d'etat against America. Then when they took out the only president that was ever working for us because he did this and he was going to get us out of Vietnam. And you got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. This is the original fraud that introduced the idea of the buzzed cauldron missions. The original one. What was it? Was it 1962 or whatever? 50. I don't know when it was. It doesn't matter. I propose... within 10 years, we land a man on the moon. Jackie, get me a drink. He proposed that fraud. Well, Matt, when he proposed it, he was convinced that we'd be able to do it for real. Oh, sure. No thanks. I'll pass. All part of the same deception. Just another chapter in the perverted play. Step 1. Is what's being presented a trick or a deception? Now, most truthers, people listening to this, others, we're getting very good at that. No doubt we're getting very good at that. Is what's being presented a trick, a lie, or a deception? And pretty much everything you point to is yes. Okay? But even if you can see through it and you just point and say yes, the system is fine with that if you don't move on to the other steps. This is where it traps you onto that perpetual hamster wheel or animal farm right here. It'll give you what you need to stay right here so you never move on. It doesn't care if you can call it out. This is where we struggled in the past. It doesn't mind one bit if the nature of the lie or deception is revealed, as long as, well, one, it has some way, metaphysically found a way you can never, ever share that idea with anybody else and convince anybody around you of what you see or what you found out. But, again, that's not even as important to it either, as long as you stay at step 1 and never go on to step 2 and 3. That's when it really starts to shit its pants if you move on. Step 2, what kind of world or reality, or where are we? What type of entity or minions, or who could pull all this impossible shit off every single time? Every conspiracy I've looked at for 10 years, everybody going along with it, everybody believing in it, never getting a win, nothing being exposed, basically forever. Never make a real mistake that cost them. Mistakes that we latch on to mistakes on purpose, but it's never enough to convince anybody around us. How does it do this? How do it do that? Well, a real world, you just have to see, couldn't do that. What kind of a reality could do that? One that's not very real. There you go. But why does it work tirelessly to get in my business? What kind of reality could show us the future time after time, predictively? Like thousands of times now in cartoons and movies and TV shows. And how is this happening? And it's never exposed. Nobody in history ever comes forth and says, yes, I was in on it. I was in on it. How does it code its absurdity into the biggest, most serious events? How does it work in its gematria? We'll never know. Who the F cares? All that's important is whatever could pull this off. If we haven't gotten to this point, at this point, you never will, honestly. If you don't see this as impossible in a real world just coordinated by men that sit down on the pot and ask for a fold under the stalls, it's not human. It's not very real. There's something inhuman behind it. Okay, that says a lot about, once you come to that conclusion, that is not the conclusion that the guy down the cul-de-sac will form about the nature of his reality. So it's a big step even getting to number 2, but even that's irrelevant without step 3. What is all their shenanigans and constantly getting in our business? What does that say about who I am? What does everything they do tell me about who I am? What's the point of a society engineered to produce an endless amount of stress, worry, and anxiety? Well, there can only be a few possible explanations. It's once you get to this stage, it don't take no genius to figure out. It tells you exactly who you are. They'll tell you, even if you don't know yourself, that something likely feeds from these energy frequencies that it tries to produce in real people. Of course something feeds from it. At the very minimum, if something doesn't feed from it, then it's to it's to put you in a place where you doom your spiritual self. Or 2, it keeps me, if I get into these states or run with the bulls that the society dictates I run with, it prevents me from using this life for what it is meant to be used for creating my own spiritual path and cutting the Jacob Marley chains that I've constructed for myself over the course of this life, of separating from the reality, divorcing it, if you will. Maybe it's is it as simple? Is intention? Probably. What Nicole Kidman said in one of the final scenes in Cold Mountain. Isn't there something like they say I divorce you 3 times and it's true? I divorce. So we could do the Inman WP Inman. We can do the opposite, Inman. We can just say I marry you. We can do. Let's do it right now. Divorce the reality and the minions. And anything trying to suck me down to the abyss here or create ties that bind, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. Inman, WP. Repeating a thing don't improve it. What you do, Inman? I work wood. I'm trying to get back to cold math. Sorry. All right. So when the reality can't impose the lowest frequencies on a group, say truthers, it can't get certain truthers because they're too advanced into a certain place, then its fallback is always distraction. Its fallback is you just spend years and years of your life, your pathetic, worthless life with Glenn Beck in step 1. You spend years and decades with Fox News and Alex Jones and Glenn Beck in step 1, and they will tell you all about all the fraud. That's fine, because that keeps you from step 2 and 3. That's the only thing that's important. Step one, if they can create a chess stalemate where you're not serving it, or you're not even feeding it, but maybe you're not building more ties that bind, but you're not cutting the ties you've already made. You're not strengthening spiritual self, but you're not losing. It's kind of a chess stalemate, step one. They'll give you all the truth in the world because you're still going to be mostly under their thumb if you're in step one. That's why all these animal forests give away so much truth. There's the reason right there. What does it say about me or us if the reality through its minions is designed to do all of that? Well, the answer is obvious, isn't it? Once you have the main points figured out, stop taking this reality and its constructs so seriously. It doesn't deserve to be taken seriously. We've talked about that. Stop taking it so seriously. Only if you take it seriously can you put worry and anxiety out into the ether. Fear of death prior to death may be the strongest of Jacob Marley chains that ties one to this place. To me, there simply must be consequence, some sort of consequence for doing and acting in a certain way. This is different than the Alan Watts type thing. We're just here having experience and you just got to go through it. And I don't know. I sense consequence. I really do. I don't sense heaven and hell and the burning of fire for all eternity, but I sense consequence. Okay, that's what's revealed to me through the concept of hell, for example. If not consequence, what are all the endless reality tricks that they play on us for? What's it all for? There has to be some sort of consequence. All this manipulation to get you to emit a certain frequency, that's the ambrosia to them, admit it into the ether just for no particular reason. Well, if they feed from it, there's no consequence to something feeding on you? I would think there is. Losing parts of yourself. We're supposed to be, if something's feeding on you, you're losing Humpty Dumpty parts to it. You're not putting yourself back together. You can only put yourself back together if whatever's feeding on you, you cut them off or sour the milk or stop giving them or certain aspects of the society attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. So the legend of, giving your soul to the devil has no particular meaning then? Just carried through time for no reason? No, I believe there is consequence to living this life in a certain way. Again, I only mention it because there's a lot of Alan Watts types that just no, you just go through it. Everybody learns. Everybody ends up in the exact same place. Hey, I hope so. I don't want to doom anybody or damn anybody or anything or make suggestions like that. But there is maybe the consequence is just Matt, don't you want to take the extra 100 million years it might take to get to where? No, I want to do it now. I don't want to take the extra 100 million years. That's consequence by itself. So things look bad now out the window, but they look great for us in the most important areas where it matters. Start with this. As I said, this place isn't very real. You know how I know that, though? And no, I'm not going to say the Mandela effect, even though that's amazing evidence for those affected that this place isn't very real when something just changes before your very eyes. I'm not going to even use that. I don't need that. I'm going to say it's not very real, this place, for the simplest of reasons. Because it wants you to believe it's all 100% real. It desperately wants you to believe it's real. It wants you to take it 100% seriously all the time. And even from its perspective, that's not even good enough because it must constantly cook up endless crisis that exponentially grows over time. Here's a great example. Basic thunderstorms that were certain thunderstorms were normal in the 90s or 2005. Today, they're presented by the weathermen with the severity meters for hail risk and high wind risk and tornado risk. And every time there's a front that comes through, we're probably going to have to take shelter and all this stuff. It's like, you want to talk about the boy that cried wolf? We're sick of it. We're sick of it. I've been told to seek shelter in the basement by news people 10 times. In the last 10 years, probably 50 times, but let's be conservative. And I was told once something like that in the prior 40 years. Well, Matt, it's climate change. They're more severe. No, it's pretty much the same storms, okay? It's just they constantly have to ramp up the degree of how people should, the severity of how people should treat everything and the intensity and the consequence. It's always ramped up. It's kind of like you get the idea. They've wrung out the washcloth so much they just keep twisting for one more drop. The minions of this reality, without just consciously being in on it, Like the news people, the weather people, they do reality's bidding by turning up the perceived severity on everything. Oh, threat of war with Russia, threat of war with Iran. And it's just, you get the impression how pathetic it is, like they just trying to get one more drop out of the wringing washcloth. There's only one reason for these tactics, just to get where they're basically their tactics are being used up, and it's almost like to get the same result, they have to go further or farther. Further is better. Far, you say far when it's distance, further when it's not associated directly with distance. Like for just an example is the CV thing. I mean, we've never seen the likes of this, but it's almost like they need it. Like somebody that's on heroin, for example. I don't know this, but they say, well, you might need more and more and more of a dose of something to get the same high or the same effect. And it seems kind of like that's what's going on with these minions assholes on behalf of the reality itself. They might be doing all of this stuff on steroids, maybe, just throwing it out there, because they have to turn the meter up constantly to get the same effect. Just something to think about. The entire reality is laid down by the minions, so real people take it 100% seriously. From the Big Bang to the space myth, climate change. One of the reasons for hundreds of thousands of climate change news articles over a 20-year period, hundreds of thousands, is to make this place more real. It's how it metaphysically works. It convinces you or convinces real people things like this. Your behaviors and actions are real, and they infect the physical environment, and that's leading to climate change. The subconscious, unconscious mind, the message is everything's real, and it's happening. And then you project those intentions out onto the reality screen and make it so, Captain Picard. Real people at least don't realize everything here stems first from consciousness. First from consciousness. If they can get enough real people to believe in, say, the severity of storms associated with climate change, then they're more than halfway there to making it real, to Picard, make it so. It all comes from the consciousness of real people. If by some miracle real people would withdraw consciousness and attention, and we would just walk away, free will, free won't, walk away from their perverted images that are constantly flashed on the screen, things that it desperately wants us to believe in, it itself would likely seek to exist. It needs us on that hill. It wants us on that hill. It needs us on that hill to exist, in my opinion. This is potentially what the ancient civilizations figured out. I don't know, all these structures, and they all morphed out of here. They morphed out. Maybe they won. Who knows? We'll talk about that more in the future. Ever hear me say this before? The reality gives itself away? Yeah, a few times. So how does the reality give itself away? One of a million examples. We have 1,000 movies about space now, TV shows, thousands and thousands of comic books. It's all being presented in the same exact way. And with the latest one we have now being that gentle Netflix show or series called Away, starring $1 Million Baby. They're just doing that in a more emotional and gentle state. But it's just a same old spin on the same old dumb space Matt Damon Mars crap. With zero research or any real evidence found by me or us, we can tell instantly that all the space stories all over media leads us to the clear fact that the presentation of space isn't real. All right? By itself, it tells us that, the way it's presented in media. Without doing any other research or any other investigation, yes, by itself, it tells us that. It's been done in the same way so many different times through the system's media that you can simply just look at it and say, that is not the way it works. Nobody gets into a tuna fish can. So a news cycle that for 20 years centers on the horrible and scary terrorism threats. It centers on homeland security and red and yellow alert levels. And it centers on shoe bombers and millions of stories and news articles, how we just were saved just in the nick of time and we got away with this and these bad guys were caught just before they did the next big dastardly deed. You can just look at that without any investigation and say, well, the overpresentation of it tells me it's not real. Isn't that a little arrogant, Matt, to jump to that conclusion? No, it's not. If you study the way it works and you know the way it works. If you know the way reality works, you don't need to do any research in certain areas anymore. You can simply point at what it pathetically tries to present and say, that right there, point at, look, that shit right there, and its overpresentation and its desperation in wanting me to believe in it, that tells me it ain't real. It tells me it's a fairy tale. That's all you need. I'm serious. Of course, the same is true of the CV thing. But somehow they've delivered just enough illness, just enough real, where all of it is gobbled up and believed and lapped up by the masses. You know, just like I said, illness may stem from the cells, you know, the non-germ theory, the cell's reaction to becoming part of a new reality or new frequencies introduced where 5G is a factor. All of it's a factor. But I just point out that the way it's pulling this off is the same inhuman way, Goldilocks right down the middle way it pulls everything off, which tells me again, there's no possible way just men and women are coordinating this. It's much more than that. Of course, the system mostly is a perpetual liar, but we know from time to time it must present the truth. We know this. Why it must? Well, we'll never know why it must, but who cares? We don't need to know anymore. We know it must, and it does for those paying attention. However, at this point, for 10th level Jedi, the truth it reveals, mostly in media, whatever truth bubbles up through The Simpsons or any form of entertainment or truth or a Shakespeare play, wherever it comes from, the truth in media is redundant to us at this point. It's overkill to us at this point. We don't need to know anymore. We don't need to know it. Now, I'll continue to analyze movies. It's interesting. It's fascinating. It's my hobby. We all find it interesting. But we should just realize we don't need another Simpsons episode or another Under the Silver Lake movie. We don't need any more of it. We should be in a certain place. Only look upon any sort of this sort of investigation as a hobby and make sure it's not an addiction because it banks on that as well. So who here listening to this thought that rock groups wrote their own music? Well, me neither. I mean, you know, of course, 90 whatever percent didn't write their own music. They're all, for the most part, puppets of the system with a few exceptions. But I hope, you know, for the sake of the channel, I hope you stick with me. People are at different levels. Stick with me as I analyze the next movie, like I did The Adjustment Bureau. But I want you to know, you know this, most of you we don't need that any longer. Essentially, we've already won. You know what you need to do. You just have to decide to do it or not. It's that simple. And it's very simple. The truth presented through some channels so complicated, that's false. The fact that it is so complicated when you first get into it, and the screen does appear so hard to figure out, the truth that comes out of that is very, very, it's always got to be the opposite then. It's a yin and yang. Then the real truth of it has to be very simple if it appears complicated. That's just how it works. The truth of this world as it relates to ourselves is always simple. So don't forget that. The reality loves the endless research phase because in that phase, very little is put by us into practice because we're still in the research phase. Still Jedi training. We'll just be a Jedi. Go out. Cain left the damn monastery and Grasshopper, he just left and, you know, walked the earth. You know, you're going to walk the earth like Cain from Kung Fu? That's what Vincent said in Pulp Fiction. Yeah, you know what you call that, Jules? That's a bum. That's a bum. Without legal tender and without a hitman job, you're just a bum. Well, maybe. I'd rather be a bum outside of the society than a senior vice president somewhere inside it. So I think Cain's lifestyle from Kung Fu looks pretty good from my perspective, but he won't be able to go anywhere in 2020. You don't have legal medical papers, medical passport on Grasshopper. So is it because of this truth that must be revealed? And is it because of what we now see are, of course, mistakes on purpose, mistakes in what they present as a real news event, which we see the fraud, but there's so many poorly crafted elements that we now realize these are mistakes on purpose? Is because of these things that a growing number in our community believe, in a sense, that the controlling faction, or you could call the Illuminati, that they should be praised in some way because inside this reality they are essential. They're an essential element in our spiritual growth. You know, there's truth to that. In some way, we would not be where we are without 7-Eleven is a part-time job. We use them to grow. There's truth in that, no doubt. But it's funny how it's not just one person I've had a dialogue with will think I'm just pointing at him. Others have come to me. There's YouTube videos. There's how in some way this underlying minion element, Illuminati, etc., needs to be not praised, but in some way that's kind of what they're saying. Like, well, you know, and I don't see it that way, as you know. The best example I keep using over and over is the snake or the small snake. You can get it to bite your arm to develop a venom resistance. The snake biting your arm is helping you develop a venom resistance, but the snake doesn't care about you. It's not trying to help you. That's the role of these assholes, in my opinion. And, but you know, the one person I'm emailing with is they really are. I'm not sure he's saying they should be praised, but much more closer to that. They're really working for us than I see. Yes, we can learn from the assholes, but that doesn't mean they're trying to help us. They're still, in my opinion, serving themselves. So we'll continue with that. So there's a truth. You create an asshole level, minion level. We use it and can learn from it. Of course. All right. You likely signed up for this experience and agreed to it before your birth. Before your birth, you signed up for it. And somebody said, don't go in that door. That's a hard one. Well, I want a hard direct test. Well, you better prepare yourself, boy. You know that you signed up for it. So when it throws you a shit sandwich, what do you think it's going to do? A life of lessons needs difficulty. It needs suffering. It needs a group of assholes that facilitate strife. If you want to F up a golf course, for example, then bring in a bunch of George Bushwood groundhogs and gophers. If every day of your life was like that massage parlor in Rush Hour 2, where Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan were looking for Ricky Tan, Jackie Chan, Ricky Tan, where's Ricky Tan? What would this life do for you if every day was like that massage parlor? It just was easy to get a massage every day. No, spiritual weightlifting is not bending over and getting sunshine blown up your ass for 80 years until you die. You're supposed to get your ass kicked here in this reality. Our varying degrees of pain that each of us experience, to varying degrees, almost certainly is by design. But does this mean I should send a thank you letter to Belinda and Melvin Gates? I don't think so. They wouldn't understand the letter anyway. They don't even understand probably what their ultimate role is. Yes, the assholes, the minions, serve a role here, but they serve themselves in serving a larger purpose, in my opinion. Perhaps they've stayed within their contractual obligations. Perhaps they're still within their contractual obligations, although it does seem like they took a big bite of the shit sandwich recently. It really looks that way. We'll have to look at that contract closely someday. But every asshole's actions has not always led real people to spiritual growth. That's what these people that argue with me fail to see. There's a lot that they do that doesn't give people even the chance that leads to spiritual growth, because some real people were forced into something. We're just killed. We're not given a chance. My great uncle's ship in the Pacific was hit by a kamikaze. Okay, there was a lot of death that went along with World War II. It's not all fake. Okay. You know, my uncle's ship, he told me about how he was hit with a kamikaze, his plane. People died. His ship was hit by a Japanese Mitsubishi or whatever. He died roughly 20 years ago. We know that thousands of men were hit by machine gun fire at Utah and Omaha Beach in Normandy, storming the beaches, like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan. That's real. Did these men have a chance to grow spiritually? Or did the minions of this reality just directly F them over with death? See, it's not all about, let's send them a prize, let's bake them a cake because of what these minions, by acting as assholes, are doing for us. It's not always that simple, see? Although, how many people see it that way? But I understand the position these people are taking. They are necessary in a way for our spiritual growth. Of course, where would we be without 9/11? Some people believe these minions create this shit situation on Earth, but it's just like a mother's tough love. so we can learn our lessons. It's just like a mother's tough love. Hillary Clinton didn't want to hurt any of us. She cries at night for Argentina and for us, but she has to do what she has to do so we learn. Nah, it ain't that simple. I ain't sending no 1-800-Flowers to these assholes. Isn't it so kind of them, how they F us all over? So I believe we can and we do learn our lessons based on their actions. But that does not mean they are not serving themselves, and it doesn't mean they still don't give an F about us. There are too many instances of direct suffering or direct death caused by the assholes' actions and the minions to believe they're on our side. You know, look at Aleppo by itself. Look at Aleppo, Syria by itself. It's people drinking out of rusty pipes and pooping in the same hole. They're just, that's the spiritual. You have to go through that to spiritually level up. No, these assholes, to me, have crossed the line in many regards, including what's happening now. Nevertheless, the Six Flag ride operators, or just like Six Flag ride operators, these assholes fulfill a role in this weird-ass theme park that we can choose to benefit from. I don't know. There are a lot of possibilities. You know, perhaps within their contract that the minions are bound to play in this role, in this reality, in this snow globe. Maybe their contract allows them to deliver real and direct death to some, because if not, it wouldn't be consistent with the character or the part they're playing, or if there wasn't direct death delivered to some, they wouldn't look the part. See, above all, the reality here must be believed by all taking part. It must be taken seriously and believed. Thus, the reason many people say we come in here with a complete mind wipe. If you just knew you were in a video game, you wouldn't take anything seriously. For everything to happen as it should, everybody has to believe in it. All right? So maybe they're allowed to deliver direct death because that is necessary, potentially, for the reality to be believed in, at least from people like us that are starting to sniff out that something's not quite right, to put it mildly. So, if you didn't take it seriously, there'd be no point to all of this. Thus, the reason for coming here, you come in here, Tommy, remember? The deaf, dumb, and blind kid sure plays a mean pinball. Truth drop. We come in here, Tommy. We come in here, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid. What else did these puppets sing to us over the years? The Who. They sang, "Who are you? Who?" Yeah, that makes sense. That would be written by a bunch of 20-year-olds. And Tommy. And Eminence Front, it's a put on. Eminence Front, it's a put on. Yeah, I'm sure Roger and Pete were just these young geniuses, and they took no marching orders at all. Never attended any sessions at the Illuminati window to get their marching orders. No way, man. These musicians, they are told to put this stuff out. What's the recent ridiculous instance? Bob Dylan, I guess, puts out that 10-minute song about the Debbie Does Dallas event. I mean, give me a break. He didn't decide to do that or want to do that. He is an absolute pathetic puppet. And by the way, that song is so bad, it's not even worth listening to. I don't even bother with the truth drops. It's a joke. Putting Aleppo aside, Utah Beach, Omaha Beach, for the most part, the human being, the real people in this realm, for the most part, need to choose to degrade or doom themselves. Okay, that is generally, with a few exceptions, how it seems to work. This does not mean choosing to be a Ouija board manufacturer. It doesn't have to be that blatant to just choose outright evil. No, there's a lot of ways you can choose to degrade yourself that, from the way society will look upon it, that it looks like you're actually winning and succeeding, but it's just the opposite. But on the day of your death, or anybody's death, if you find that you played well on this field and the clock hits 00 and you look down and the system has bestowed you with all sorts of awards and honors and medals and what are those fake diplomas they give Bill Cosby at Temple and things like that. Maybe they're Temple's giving him another one in jail. It matters not what the score on the field is. The field will show you've won. You've won playing its game. It's 00. Oh boy, I won. Look at that score. You've lost. You're a, you're a three-time loser if the score on the field shows that you've won because you've played on its field. And the scoreboard here will be a deception right down to the moment of your death. Now, there are ways to offset this. If you've been playing on the field and you've been winning its awards and you've been getting its honors, there are ways to offset it. But they're few and far between if the system has praised you for your entire life. In other words, you run out of time to correct that situation. If you're a senior partner at a law firm worth about $20 million, an asbestos law firm, you have a very short period of time to make good on your soul and on that money because you a three-time loser. Of course, it looks like you're a tremendous winner with your beach home and your Audi leases and your Maserati and your, what do you got? You've just put a movie studio in your house. You look like a winner, but you a loser. And I'll take that back a little bit. I'm not just talking about the money. If someone would say, well, I made all my money absolutely helping people and helping little old ladies cross the street and helping people do this and that spiritually, well, then I take it back. But I highly doubt the senior partner at the asbestos law firm made that money helping people move forward and accomplishing their life goals and missions. I would doubt that, but it's not just the money that's going to doom them, in my opinion. However, whatever. That is a sidebar. We could get into this for a long time. But just remember the basics of what was discussed here. I believe this is the absolute basics on how this reality functions and how a real human being should operate inside of it. Right? These realizations, if you truly resonated with many of the things that I've said, not that I have all the answers, but I believe it's not that complicated. If you resonated with most of this, and you're taking steps in your life, you've already won. You've already won. It can't be that hard. It can't be designed that 99 point whatever lose and only one out of millions win. It's not that hard. Okay, I know it's hard. The rich man can't get through the damn keyhole. It's hard to get through the keyhole, but it can't be that hard. And think of where we are and what we're doing compared to all the little idiots around us. Maybe there's a quota system, like a bell curve. If that's the case, we've already won. We can sit back and play video games the rest of our life. The bell curve is so skewed towards the mindless zombies and the downloaded, but we can't assume that. We have to know there is no quitting, assuming, we've already won. I'm going to put my feet up on the desk. No, we have to keep going, basically until the day of our death. But, put it this way. If we're not getting out of here, who the hell is getting out? Think of what I just said there. Think of the way I put that. Reality is always out to doom ourselves. How the heck is anybody going to get out of here if we can't get out of here? So remember that balance thing. Remember that movie Inception? Leonardo DiCaprio had that thing he spun, dreidel, whatever that thing was. It proved to him he wasn't in a dream, something like that. So carry something like that, something that will remind you about reality itself and what you're supposed to do. Just literally, it's like I have my, just forget. I have certain things that remind me, but nothing I carry in my pocket. And I think it's almost something that we should carry with us to remind us of what we need to do at every turn. Like we have the thing in our pocket. You look down at your Social Security card or your name, your legal fiction, and say, that's not me. That's the legal fiction. Just constant cutting ties, constant reminders, because it's so easy to get pulled back into the shit show that's going on. Something that reminds you that you agreed to this, and you will not be led to on your own construct that the shackles that it's trying to put around you for it. Instead, you will be reminded to constantly cut ties with it. What's going on here is outside of anything that we fish in the fish tank will ever understand or be able to comprehend. It's always been that way, but as we look out our window now and reality is literally breaking down into a science fiction novel, it is more bizarre what's happening now than almost any sci-fi novel you could pull out. It is literally that insane. And, we're not going to be able to understand exactly what's going on in the avatar, but we're not meant to. We don't have to get it all figured out. Okay? Nothing, and I mean nothing, though. If nothing else, nothing should surprise us at this point after all we've seen. Nothing should surprise us. Some really weird examples, but I believe this wholeheartedly. This is the mental state we need to be in. One, to win, but also to cope with the bullshit we're going through now. And I believe this wholeheartedly. This is not pie in the sky bullshit trying to get anybody to feel good to close out this video. I believe this. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm close. All right? If Planet X, Nibiru, literally tomorrow, comes around the sun, all right, and it's just popping out around there. It looks like we have two suns like Luke's home planet, and it's the size of the moon. It's growing larger by the day. It's simple. You just simply look at it, smile, laugh, and say, what is happening is exactly what's supposed to happen. You know, if NASA announces that there's going to be something that strikes the Earth, and something is really going to strike, and I forget about what space is or what space isn't. You just say, okay, that's exactly what's supposed to happen for this life test, for this life experience. It's all exactly as it's supposed to be. The minions, they're not all powerful. It appears they've hijacked this reality and they've taken it from what it should be or what it once was. If you could back up far enough, I'm sure we'd find this is all as it's supposed to be. And if it's all as it's supposed to be, then is it scary? No, it's not. I mean, here comes Nibiru. Oh, my God. Your neighbor runs outside and then says, get out here, Matt. This thing, I just heard on the news. There it is. It's going to hit within a week. Just smile back at your neighbor and say, well, so the F what? That is exactly what's supposed to happen in this life journey. He wouldn't understand that. And with Nibiru coming in like that, he wouldn't have the time to understand it. But this is where we need to be, really. No matter what happens, of course they're going to drop another shoe going into the fall. They might drop 2, 3 shoes. It could get extremely ugly. It's what's supposed to happen, right? With what's happening now, Melbourne, Australia, they always use Australia as the test case on how they'll bring it here. It'll be the winter of hell. They'll lock cities down again. I mean, this is coming. Okay. So what? Whatever news story presents itself, whatever horrific tragedy, this entire reality is being managed. All right. It's being managed. This is exactly as it should be. The reality and how it projects itself through its minions would be banking on the fact that it could get as many real people as it could to give in and to lose themselves to the fear of the situation that's presented. But if it will get millions, and it will, to lose themselves to the fear of the situation of whatever the horror story that it presents, per the yin and yang, this must also be true. Number 2 must also exist per the rule of yin and yang. Okay? That this is the best situation possible for real spirits to grow to the maximum degree, and that this will be our last rodeo in this 3D place. Okay? In this one. Maybe we'll choose another one someday, but we ain't coming back to this one. It will be my choosing. It's the yin and yang. It's the most ancient symbol for a reason. If it's going to get people running up and down the street because of Nibiru or whatever horror story and ripping their hair out with fear and anxiety and worry, then you take it on the back end. If it takes, it has to give. I believe that. And it's not just Matt believes that. What do you think the yin and yang symbol is for? The most famous ancient symbol of all time. What is it saying? Okay? Whatever the reality wants me to do, for the sake of this existence and this go-around in this life, I'm not going to sacrifice the next 20 trillion years, give up the next 20 trillion for the next 20 by taking the action Jackson or doing anything else to conform with what the system wants. Okay, this is assuming years even apply outside of the snow globe, which they don't. Time doesn't even exist here. It's just the perception of time exists here. The perception of its passing likely only exists in this snow globe reality. If you get a news report in that says, new strain, half the cities, people aren't expected to survive, smile at it and know that it's being managed and it's as it's supposed to be. There's nothing to fight. You just accept. It's managed. The crypt keeper is in the cockpit. It's as it's supposed to be. And, that realization brings a sense of calm. It absolutely does. There's nothing to fight, though. It wants to be fought. That's getting you to succumb to the wrong frequencies again. There is nothing for your fleet of pickup trucks to go get. Fighting it physically likely forges the largest Jacob Marley chains around you that will bind you here that you'll never be able to cut or get rid of. However, don't get me wrong, self-defense is something entirely different to me. And I believe under all costs the avatar can be protected. All right? Self-defense, absolutely different. If something lashes out at you, you could stomp its guts out. Totally different. Our avatar, and we inside at this point, navigating it as soul and spirit, we have a right to life. Hey, assholes. Weren't we told that somewhere? Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. What about the others? Right now, we still have life, but how about the life, the liberty, the pursuit of happiness that you supposedly promised us in what you position to be the world's most important document? What happened to that? That's not a contractual violation, assholes. The minion jerks like Belinda and Melvin Gates, Trump, Lone Scum, or Musk, people like that, they're too low level. They're too low level. They're just too stupid to truly understand, in my opinion, the metaphysical workings of this reality. It's compartmentalization on steroids. They, again, like Anderson Cooper, they have a sense in their own little domain how it's working or not working, but outside of that, I think we give them far too much credit for really understanding. I don't believe they do. Talk about useful idiots. We really should find more pity for these doomed creatures than hate. It wants your hate frequency, the reality does. I mean, it loves the hate frequency. That's why these jerks present themselves the way they do, as the most unlikable, loathsome creatures of all time. Belinda and Melvin Gates have morphed into that recently. Whatever that thing was tolerable 25 years ago. And now it's, and the same with Dr. Faust. He's just gratingly obnoxious. And, for some reason, the people around me, they do love Musk, but we can't stand him. I mean, just to be in the room with him would kind of make you toss your cookies. I mean, these people grate on us for a reason, but it's all by design. The way the Fanta can, the orange man, grates on, say, Democrats and liberals. He's designed to do that. It wants to draw out as much hate in people as it can. Okay, there's no, as far as the Trump Fanta can is concerned, there's no other explanation for how the Fanta can presents itself on a day-to-day basis. It's just an obnoxious, grating idiot. He's there to get under your skin. He wants to get under your skin. He needs you on that hill complaining about his orange hair because that's his role. All right, and he plays it to perfection, and I'm sure he will be well rewarded for it someday by Emperor Palpatine. Okay, at this point, we are on the creepy airline and it's at altitude. There's very little we can do at this point. There ain't no going back to the terminal, folks. Okay, but I don't want to go back. Neither do you. We're here for a reason. Move forward. There ain't no parachute either. There's no parachute we can jump out of the plane with, but we don't want one. We shouldn't want one. To jump out is to fail and potentially have to do this shit all over again. Anybody want that? Sure. We're human in this avatar. Always remember to put that. Don't just say I'm only human. That's word magic against ourselves. We are human as long as we are in this avatar for the duration of our lives. That's accurate. We want to enjoy the rest of our lives. We want to be able to drive down the street without a medical passport or quantum dots. Sure, we certainly hope the creepy crypt keeper pilot can land the plane successfully, and eventually we come out of this to a degree. We all would want that. But ultimately, no matter how bad it gets, who cares if he can or cannot land the plane successfully? Just put the seat back. No, it's all being managed. It's all being designed and managed. It's exactly as it should be playing out for your spiritual journey and test here. And as people are running up and down the aisles, gouging their eyes out, simply lean forward, ring the button for your stewardess to come and order another drink and watch the insanity with a smile on your face, knowing you're far, far above it. As long as the reality has us in the middle of this shit show, we're right in the middle of it. We don't have the right perspective, the perspective of moving back and looking down on it from 50,000 feet. We can put our seat back and watch everybody run up and down the aisle and gouge each other's eyes out. The reality wants you in the middle of it, breathing life into it, thinking it's all real. It wants somebody to gouge your eyes and you gouge them, and you get out there in the aisle and participate. What are you sitting back in that chair for, just listening to your headset, eating another bag of peanuts? You get out in that aisle and you start gouging eyes out like everybody else running around and ripping their hair out. It wants you to participate in the madness. Of course it does. But the perspective of if you know the reality gives itself away, it wants you to be in the middle of the madness, then by default, because we can learn what to do just by doing the opposite of what it wants, what should we do? We should back up from it as much as and look down on it from 50,000 feet, then from 2 miles, and look down on it from 10 miles. It becomes a pathetic little snow globe experience. So the truth of it just starts to flow out, things we should already know. That, well, our avatar body is on that crypt keeper flight. People are running around the aisles with the CV thing, ripping their hair out. But we're looking down on it from miles and miles away. You could see, well, we're above that flight. An aspect of myself is in there, but I'm now looking down on it. I'm way above the flight. Oh, you know what I realized next? I'm more than the airline. Just there's an aspect of us in that seat, but overall, I'm much more than the airline. Well, then that means I'm looking down at it like that. I'm bigger than the reality itself. It's this little snow globe experience, a joke. There's an aspect of me in there. I'm bigger than John Mayer. What's that truth drop in the second CD? A bigger than my body gives me credit for. Oh, the Mayer albums are all full with that truth drop constantly. He's a real creepy Illuminati operator. John Mayer just came to me. Bigger than my body gives me credit for. Song 2, I believe, on the second, not his second album, but the one that came after, I don't know, the Room for Squares or whatever, the second one. So you're bigger than the reality itself. So do you realize that when you're on the creepy Crypt Keeper flight? If Superman flies up right next to you on the plane, he stands on the wing, or if you prefer Outlander from The Boys, you're bigger than he is. He's stuck here. He'll always be bound inside the snow globe. Well, he's Superman. You bigger than he is by a factor of about 1 trillion. All right? He's stuck here. You have a spiritual bridge out of here that you're connecting with at a minimum by cutting the ties that bind us to this place, that come always per what the reality delivers in the form of a trick. So it teaches us to do it to ourselves. So when they drop the other shoe in a few months or whatever they hit us with, people around us will be running up and down the aisles, freaking out, of course. And, it's a shame for them. I mean, they will probably have a few more million miles to log on Pandemic Am, the old airline, Pan Am. We'll call it Pandemic Am, whatever. Just put the seat back and smile. It's your last flight. You'll be going home. I'll be going home. The thought process of an atheist is bordering on retarded. The evidence is overwhelming that the ratio of a dream to the waking world will basically be this experience to the next phase of existence. Oh, and in terms of taking clues from the reality and doing the opposite of what it wants us to do, what does it suggest regarding death? How should we approach it or look upon it? Does it want you in fear of it, or does everything that's an authority figure in this reality have us welcoming and celebrating death? Well, because the entire society is based on the fear of death, including horror films and all the rest, that once again, it gives itself away. The opposite is always true or almost always true. For old souls, this seems like a last non-go-around, doesn't it? Or a last time we're going to experience this without the deja vu, without the Monopoly board coming back around. Pass go, collect $200. No, sorry, not this time. You know, we sense that this is the end, okay? We sense we've done this before. And you kind of sense this is different. Like, I'm not doing this again. Homie, don't play that. You know, to me, this is likely why the emotions of real people like you and I right now are overflowing at this time. You know, have I surveyed anybody? No. But I guarantee you, it's because it's coming out of me, and I'm a real person, it's coming out of you. I guarantee you, in many ways, your emotions, for lack of better description, your emotions at this time are overflowing. All right? Now, this has nothing to do with being scared. Nothing to do with being scared. To me, I've interpreted it in myself. It's more like a sentimentality. Sentimental, but it's on steroids. Just to give you an example, I'm not getting this out properly. I get sentimental now over a cardboard box, for example, I'm about to throw into the recycle bin. If my cat sat on it a few times and I had it in the other room for a few months. Literally, like, I'm sentimental about everything like that. You know, oh, this fork is rusty, but I remember once when I used it to eat Chef Boyardee and Zara sat on my lap and, oh, I want to cry or something. I'm just, these are natural emotions, in my opinion, from people that sense this is not that we're scared and we're going to die. No, that this is the last time we're doing this. You know, there's still some real heaven here associated with nature, our animals, our pets, certain relationships. There's still, this reality is a merger of heaven and hell. The hell has been winning for a long time, but there's still a lot of things here that likely cannot be replicated in another form of existence. So these emotions come out, being sentimental about everything. It has nothing to do with fear. To me, it has to do with knowing that this is kind of the last go around, or the last time we will experience these things in this exact way. And if we ever want to do it again, it will be up to us. All right. So, if you're like this and you're listening to my voice and you're going, yeah, that is me recently, overflowing emotion, looking at things differently, stopping to notice how a spider weaves a web, wanting to tear up or being sentimental over things that we just wouldn't have cared crap about just 5 or 10 years ago. It's about, in my opinion, missing or knowing that this is the last non-go-around and missing the certain aspects of heaven that are part of this place. Something that somebody put here that's far beyond the minions. All right? But that part of it, that heaven part, has been losing to the hell because of these minion assholes for a long time. Okay, this is likely the reason why I've begun to speak to my flowers recently. I thank them for the flowers they bloomed during the summer. I tell them they did a good job. Things like that. I get very choked up when I do this, okay? This is not fear. This is all a natural progression of a real human being upgrading itself, which is the opposite of what most people are now taking a downgrade. All right? I'll continue to talk to the flowers. They don't talk back, at least not yet. Thanks for listening.